Impact players? The Ohio State defense has a few of them. Who will be impact players as the defense returns to the field this weekend? We'll discuss that today on Locked on Buckeyes.
You are Locked on Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked on Buckeyes for the Locked on Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is Tuesday, October 18th in the year 2022, and I want to thank you for making Locked on Buckeyes your first listen or first watch of every single day. On today's episode, we will go through three questions I have for the Ohio State defense as the Buckeyes begin play in the second half of the regular season. But before we get to any of that, impact players, they're all over the place. Ohio State's offense has them. The Buckeyes defense has them. But with today's show being all about the defense, let's focus in on the defensive side of the ball that has been special so far. I mean, doing some crazy, wild things in 2022. Yes, there are some that will say the Buckeyes haven't played anybody. I've heard it on radio stations. I've heard it on podcasts. I have seen it on the Twitter. That means absolutely nothing. Even if you don't play anybody, you still have to show up, show out, and really dominate that opponent to make a mark week in and week out. The Buckeyes defense has done that. They have consistently done that. And so when people say they haven't played anybody, let's go out there and look at what they do on the field and then value what they've done, grade the play, not grade their opponent. But when you think about those types of things, then coming back on the field and the Buckeyes being good on defense this year, a few players come into mind that I do believe will be impact players for the Buckeyes as they return to the field this weekend, not just against the Iowa Hawkeyes, but throughout the rest of the season. The first one on my list is a guy who I was very, 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 very high on when he was coming out of high school. That is JT Tuimoloau or Jalen Tuimoloau, depending on if you want to go by his correct name. His numbers are not eye-popping. 7 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 0 sacks. You might be saying, Jay, why in the world do you think JT Tuimoloau is a player that'll be an impact player for the Buckeyes as they return to the field? And to me, it's really simple. Tuimoloau is a special case, special player, and with Zach Harrison getting a lot of attention, moving down to defensive tackle at times, Tuimoloau is tasked with something that I don't think many sophomores at Ohio State are tasked with. Getting sometimes double teamed or getting held almost every time you're trying to rush the passer. And I do think at some point, especially the time off to let your body heal, work with Larry Johnson, get some more film study, be able to see some more what you're doing and how it's being impacted on the field and ways to overcome even being held, play in, play out, play in. I mean, watch the Michigan State game. Watch the Wisconsin tape. You'll quickly see Tuimoloau is being held all the time. But as you think about all of those things, Tuimoloau is a player that once it pops, once he gets over that hump and gets his first sack of the game, your juices start flowing, your adrenaline starts pumping, you start doing things that, hey, you were like, man, I've been working on this for a year and a half or 2 years at Ohio State. The next thing you know, things start flowing and going very well for him. Tuimoloau can be special. I believe he will be special at Ohio State in the second half of the season. And I do think, even though Mike Hall, I do believe, is the leader in sacks right now, I think Eichenberg has a couple as well. I still think Tuimoloau at the end of the season could be the leader in sacks in that statistical category at the end of the season. Also, another player that I believe will be an impact player for the Buckeyes, it's Ronnie Hickman. Ronnie Hickman is a player, if you go to and talk to Jim Knowles or any of the defensive coaches, and you ask, and I believe this came up in a press conference, how often does Ronnie Hickman have a misassignment or do something wrong, and is he in the wrong spot or blown coverage? It's not very often. No, not very often at all. And once again, let's go and look at some really quick numbers. 23 tackles, 1 interception, That's the extent of his numbers. So why do I think that he's going to be an impact player? Well, a lot of it's going to be things he's doing on the field, being very, very solid, a sound tackler. Remember, I believe he was the leading tackler a year ago, and then Ohio State's linebackers up their play, the D line up their play, and so you don't need a safety making all the tackles this year. Your top two guys in tackles, top two defenders and players in sacks this year. One, Tommy Eichenberg, he has 50. He's going to be a 100 tackle guy this year. And then Still Chambers has 31 tackles. Ronnie Hickman is third on the team in tackles for the season with 23. I think his leadership from last year, the experience he got last year on the field, the sour taste that's still left in his mouth from losing to the team up north and really not accomplishing any goal the team had set last year prior to the season, I think it's going to fuel Ronnie Hickman to be a phenomenal piece of the pie for the Buckeyes defense, to be an impact player for them as they return to the field. And then ultimately, last but not least, is if you look at the stat sheet once again, this guy is fourth on the team in tackles with 21. It's Lathan Ransom. And I remember last year here on the podcast, there were numerous people in the YouTube comments once the YouTube channel was started, and they were saying, Ransom's going to be a dog. Ransom's going to be a dog. Ransom this, Ransom that. And I am sitting here like, I see it. I do. But I was still so up in the air about the backups last year at Ohio State because they played so many players, and I was kind of like, this is just kind of messing with my head. But once we started to see what can happen on the field when Ransom could get out there and even though he broke his leg in the Rose Bowl, he's playing phenomenal football. I think we're starting to see that Ransom is a player that might be better than Josh Proctor. That if you put him on there consistently, you didn't play Proctor and Ransom back and forth, you might see Ransom could be playing himself into being a future NFL draft pick. Future has to keep doing things, has to be out there consistently, but I could see him being a future, even day 2 NFL draft pick when he is draft eligible and once he declares for the NFL draft. By the numbers, 23 tackles, 1 interception, 21 tackles, 1 interception. That was a phenomenal pick he had a week ago. I mean, very rangy. He read it quickly, and then he skedaddled back deep to pick the ball off. Also, it's 1 pass deflection on the season as well. I like Ransom's game. I like his physicality. Like how he can be solid in the run game in the box. Also in pass coverage, back and normal safety positioning. I love it. And I think Lathan Ransom, along with Ronnie Hickman and JT Tuimoloau, will be impact players for the Buckeyes going forward throughout the rest of the season. Throughout the rest of the season, the defense has been special so far. I believe they will be special when they step back on the field. What are some pressing questions I have about this defense as they return to the football field? We'll discuss those next right here on Locked On Buckeyes. From cringing at the pump to getting an eye-popping check at your favorite restaurant, inflation is hitting us all where it hurts. And it really hurts. That's why I started using Upside. Upside is an incredible app for anyone who buys gas, groceries, or dines out. With every purchase, I'm earning cash back thanks to Upside. To get started, download the free Upside app, use my promo code LOCKED, that's LOCKED, and get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. Next, claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside. Check in at the business, pay as usual with a credit or debit card, and get paid. In comparison to credit card rewards or loyalty programs, you can earn 3 times more cash back with Upside. Upside users are earning more than $1 million every week. That's probably why they have a 4.8 star rating on the App Store. Download the free Upside app and use promo code LOCKED to get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. That's $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more using promo code LOCKED. The Ohio State defense, I've said it once, I'll say it again. They have been special, really special. The season totals, averages per game, we went over them last week with Jeff Hunt as we handed out grades for every position on the Ohio State defense. If you missed that episode or even the Ohio State position grades, go back and check those out last week. Good stuff, great stuff with my guy Jeff Hunt from the Off the Ball Network. The Ohio State defense is only giving up 160.3 passing yards per game. Teams are only giving up 1.0 passing touchdowns per game. teams are averaging less than 100 yards rushing when they play Ohio State, averaging 93.2 yards per game. That's the Ohio State defense. Totals, teams are only averaging 253.5 yards per game. That's what the Ohio State defense is giving up. I mean, it's special, man. Really, really special what they're doing. They're also averaging now 1 turnover per game. This team's special. Really, really special. Interceptions have gone up. Physicality has gone up. There have been some fumbles that have been recovered. This team has been special. But I really wonder one thing. First question on my paper. When will the Buckeyes consistently get to the quarterback? Now, this weekend, you might say, Jay, it's not going to be needed. It's Iowa. Bad offense. But as you know, with Iowa, they're consistently sound and they put out pros on the defensive side of the ball. And so with that being said, it might be a little trickier for the Ohio State offense to get things going, especially early. We remember the last time we saw the Buckeyes not play a game with when they weren't playing the week before. That was the Notre Dame game. Now, you may say, Jay, that's game number 1. Notre Dame played out of their mind. I get all those things. But the Buckeyes offense was not what it was week 1 as it was the rest of the season. Now, Iowa's defense might play as physical, might be good this game, and I think they'll play better and play out of their minds. At the same time, you want to start this week because Penn State's offensive line, it might give you some time, some opportunities to get to the quarterback and to get to Sean Clifford the following week. Maryland, Talea is out, so you're really going to be chopping at the bit to get to the backup quarterback at Maryland if Talea is still out at that point in time. Indiana football is not really anything to hang your hat on. Northwestern's one of the worst teams in the conference. So there are still some bad football teams that are out there, and the Buckeyes need to consistently get to the quarterback. It's going to make things easier for guys like Cam Brown and Denzel Burke, who have been, and even J.K. Johnson and Jair Brown has had some issues as well, who have been a little hindered, not only by the injuries that they have, but also locating the ball when it's in the air. It's been a struggle at times. I understand it. I get it. It's your thing. These are things that are going to happen. I completely understand it. And so I get everything that's going on, but the Buckeyes need to. And I think they will consistently start getting to the quarterback. I just don't know who. Coming into the season, I was higher on Toy Maloa getting to the quarterback than Jack Sawyer. Some of you said Jack Sawyer, this is his time period. I get all of those things. So I am really starting to wonder and be very, very curious. Is it Zach Harrison? Is Javonte Jean-Baptiste the secret weapon? Or is Mike Hall or Teron Vincent going to be the guys that consistently get to the quarterback during the second half of the season? It's literally TBD to be determined. But that's just one question I have for the Ohio State defense going into the rest of the season. Another one that I have, will the cornerback issues continue? Yes. We talked about them. And honestly, when I mentioned the quarterbacks, getting to the quarterback, I didn't really realize I was going to bring up Cam Brown, J.K. Johnson, Jair Brown, Denzel Burke, Jordan Hancock's injury. I don't know. I have no idea what is going to happen with those guys. But and I don't say the corners have been bad from start to finish of the game. I have not said that. And actually, Denzel Burke, he could go, had probably his best game of the year. Or 2 weeks ago, that might be. But when it comes to the CBs or the cornerbacks, I am going to be watching and looking to see how they perform. Iowa's quarterback isn't good. Sean Clifford is better. Not a C.J. Stroud level quarterback, but Sean Clifford is better. I am going to be curious to see over the next couple weeks, are there still going to be issues where Ohio State allows a quarterback who is not up to an average quarterback in the Big Ten Conference, expose them and really have a field day? Are those things going to happen? Because one thing we know for sure about this team, Ohio State's defense is lethal, and Ohio State's defense is still going to be out there, and teams are going to be passing against them because they have to. If you're down 21 quickly or 24-0 quickly, all of a sudden your running game goes out the window. You start to formulate and try to change things quickly because you just got to do it. You just got to get it done. And so I am curious to see the cornerbacks at Ohio State. How do they look? How do they perform? And go that route. One more question. I want to add another segment to this show here today. Well, change the topic for another segment for the rest of the show. The last question here. Will depth need to be utilized at every position for the Buckeyes as they return to the field? And I say that because on offense, we have seen one of your top two running backs, miss a game in back-to-back games. Trevion Henderson misses a game. Mayan Williams goes off. The very next week, Mayan Williams misses the game. Henderson goes off. So these are real-life things we're seeing on the offensive side of the ball. We have also seen Jaxon Smith-Njigba, a guy who some said was going to win the Bolitnikoff Award this season. He has missed I think he's only played 2 games, 4 catches over the entirety of the entire season. 6 games the Buckeyes have played. He's only played in 2 of them. Hasn't played the entire game in either of those matchups that he was on the field for. And so we have seen on the offensive side, not at the O-line, not at tight end, receiver and running back, you have seen somebody step up in big ways. And luckily the depth at receiver helps you. The difference in depth because you don't have Evan Pryor, so you don't really have that third guy. If you're down one of your top 2 guys, we have seen the Buckeyes not even use Dallin Hayden, who is your third string running back this year, and just rely on the top guy. Now, maybe they're trying to take a page from Jim Harbaugh's book. Don't want to say it, and some of y'all might say no, but Jim Harbaugh literally week 1, week 2 played 2 quarterbacks and said, well, quarterback here. You guys are battling it out against 2 different opponents. This is your ball. The ball's in your court. Whoever plays better, whoever I think fits better in the offense is going to be the starting quarterback. And they have gone with J.J. McCarthy over Cade McNamara, who they had a lot of success with last year. So maybe that was the thing that we saw the past couple weeks with the Buckeyes. Rest, of course, is a thing, but maybe they were just doing it a mid-season or an in-season competition. But on defense, if you lose one of your top 2 DNs or top 3 DNs, Javonte Jean-Baptiste is good. He's not a starter. So if you lose to Harrison or Tuamaloa or Sawyer, things change a little bit. If you lose Mike Hall or Teron Vincent, things drastically change a little bit. If you lose Eichenberg or Chambers, what's going to happen? Corners? We've seen the lack of depth there. They even had to move safeties to corner in the offseason to prepare for the season due to injury. Safety? We know you got a 4th. You know, you might have a 5th in Sonny Styles, but he's still TBD, to be determined. Court Williams, injured, had some injuries. So these are all things that we are trying to work out and think about right now. You know what? I hope the injuries aren't an issue. I hope the depth isn't an issue. I hope it's not. But you know what? It could be. Hope not, but it could be. 3 questions. I have mine. What are yours? Leave them in the YouTube comment section. Questions that we have about the Ohio State defense going into the second half of the season. And I know some of you might leave a comment or 2 about the health of Ohio State. And I have my own thoughts about the health and how Ohio State should approach players that are hurt getting back on the field. What is said thought? Stick around to find out. This is Locked on Buckeyes. Our partners at Nissan have worked with us to create a new segment across the Locked on College Network titled Thrilling Moments, where we highlight the most exciting play from the Ohio State Buckeyes game over the weekend or throughout the history of our alma mater. This week's thrilling moment from the Ohio State Buckeyes is literally not something that happened on the field from Ohio State this past weekend, but it's simply what didn't happen. The thrilling moment that these guys got a period of time to rest and relax. They need it. It came at the right time. Running backs are a little dinged up. You want to get JSN back on the field. You want to get your corners working on their craft. You want to get them healthy as well. It came at a great time, and I love it. So the thrilling moment, not from a game, not from a previous game Ohio State played, but literally the fact that the off week was perfect, and these guys had some time to rest, relax, spend time with family and friends, and then really get revitalized, rejuvenated, get that adrenaline pumping to return to the field this weekend. This segment has been inspired by the thrilling new designs featured across Nissan's new lineup of vehicles. Pursue what thrills you in the all-new Frontier, Armada, or Pathfinder today. Available now at NissanUSA.com. So, Ryan Day, in his recent presser, made a statement, and I think it was a wise statement for him in the way that he can utilize the tools that are at Ohio State and the rules that are in his favor as the head coach at Ohio State. He decided to not talk about the health, giving a health update or talking about the injury status of Njigba, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, Jordan Hancock, or Mayan Williams. He was not going to filter any questions or make any thoughts about the status, specifics, or when those three players will return to the field. I think Mayan's going to be okay. Jordan Hancock and Jaxon Smith-Njigba are a little bit interesting to me because they have been lingering injuries, and Njigba has a hamstring, which that's not something you want to deal with. And I have a couple thoughts. It was simply just one, but I have a couple. One of them might be debunking a myth that people have said about Ohio State players. Well, not Ohio State players, but in regards to Ohio State players, we're going to go to that one first and then go to one that I think the medical staff will like. If you're a medical doctor, if you're a nurse, if you're in that field, you might enjoy the final thought I have about the health and status and players at Ohio State. So it has been said that Jaxon Smith-Njigba does not need to play against certain teams, And when he gets back on the field, he'll be just fine to come back, return, and play against a Penn State. Come back and play against a Michigan. Save him for the big games. Don't allow him to play. Don't let him play against the little guys like in Iowa, who I still think can play really good football on the defensive side of the ball, or to not say a Northwestern or Indiana. No. You don't need him for those games. Save him for Penn State. Save him for Michigan. There's a couple things. One thing I'm going to say, I don't think they really even want to say it. I think the Buckeyes receivers have been just fine. That even in those bigger games, if Njigba is not on the field, the Buckeyes can still blow out the Wolverines. The Buckeyes can still blow out the Nittany Lions. I still think that without Jaxon Smith-Njigba, yes, he is one of the better receivers at Ohio State. However, what we have seen with Julian Fleming playing better, Cade Stover playing better, Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson playing better. I'm not saying Njigba's not good, but this defense the offense has done well, extremely well without him this year. But I will say this, for you to say that you don't need Jaxon Smith-Njigba until those bigger games, it shows me one thing, and it kind of goes back to the practice thing that I kind of have is here. As a player, yeah, you want to rise to the occasion. You want to have a TO moment where you break your leg, you still play the Super Bowl, have a phenomenal game, and almost help your team win the Super Bowl against the New England Patriots. If it wasn't for bad clock management, the Eagles may have won that game. But that's not all the things that I'm thinking about when you say, yeah, go to a big game. You want to play. Think about this. Think about you in your life. You have gone 6 weeks without doing something. Let's say you have an injury, you were injured, and you had to be out of work for 6 weeks. No matter if it was if you have an office job, if you're a podcaster, if you or in something in the media, verbal talking, a talking head, if you are in a physical type of job, if you're an athlete, you go 6 weeks without doing something, and all of a sudden, bam, you're thrust back out there. You know what's going to be out there? It's going to hit you quickly. One, things are different. This is not like it was sitting on the couch at home or when you're off of work. Two, you're not the same like you were when you were there previously doing it consistently. So it's going to take you a few reps, a few times to to kick the rust off, and to also allow you to be healthy and consistent and to get back up to speed with what's going on the field. Jaxon Smith-Njigba, should he play in the Iowa game if he's healthy to play? Absolutely. Why? Because those reps against Iowa will help him be fresher for the game against Penn State, or fresher against in the game against Michigan. Yes, you may say, oh, we save him until that time period when it's only a big game. No, buddy. Get those reps. Get as many reps as you can once you're healthy, because you will perform better in those big games if you did not have more reps prior to stepping back on the field against some of those bigger teams and better teams out there. You guys could tell that it kind of got under my skin. I heard it all the time. Yeah, people say save them for the big games. That's an easy talking point, but it's not the talking point you should have. No, it's not even that really educated. It just kind of sounds smart. No, it doesn't sound smart at all. Allow him, if he's healthy, to play against Iowa, play against Northwestern, play against Maryland, Indiana, because those reps are going to be very vital to his success against Penn State, against Michigan, Big Ten championship game, and beyond. Also, when it comes to players that are injured, I believe the medical staff and the Ohio State coaches need to have a set number of practices that are in place that have been completed prior to putting a player back on the field. Because just like I mentioned, if you go 6 weeks without doing something, then you get thrust back into it, right back into action. Yeah, it's going to be some rust. Yeah, you're going to be a little bit different than you were when you were doing it consistently. But also the practice thing is interesting because that allows you to get hit a little bit. That allows you to get your feet back on the field and get more familiar with the setup, with what's going on. You need those practice reps. You need those game reps against lesser opponents. My rant is over. The show is almost over. I feel better. I got that off my chest, and I hope you feel better about being Ohio State and going into the game against Iowa this weekend. Guys, we're out of here on a Tuesday. You can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. You can send all of your emails to jstevens317@gmail.com. Out of here on a Tuesday. Hope you have a great day. I hope the snow is away and it's gone. Got some snow here in Indiana. It's cold. My heat got turned on. Not a fan of it, but we all know it's coming. We also know the Buckeye Storm is returning to Ohio Stadium this weekend. I believe it's a red out. Wear your red and root hard for the Buckeyes against the Iowa Hawkeyes on Saturday at high noon.